Okay.
Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1. What? I'm giving
Sorry.
myself.
Yeah, okay, but okay.
You fucked up my countdown. All right.
I'm sorry. Do it again. Do it again. I'll mute it so
It
I
was
don't.
so good. It was so good.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Cut and Splice. This is Matt speaking.
This is Gil.
And this is Jason.
And this time around, we are going to be talking about Michael Mann's 1995 film Heat, starring Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, also featuring Val Kilmer, very young Natalie Portman. It seems like a pretty unique and monumental cops and robbers movie. I'll let the other guys chime in, obviously, but I strained to think of another movie of the genre that's 3 hours long and really allows the characters to steep and develop and come to a serious cathartic moment at the end. Obviously, we'll save spoilers for the end. As usual, we'll spend 15 minutes or so giving a basic overview and review of the movie, and then we'll spend the rest of it spoiler filled and analyzing every nook and cranny of it. So I guess I'll open it up to the other guys to come in and give their initial thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm curious. When was the first time that all of us have watched this movie, or at least our earliest memory of watching it?
Well, I know for sure that I saw it on VHS the first time. I think I was like 12 or 13, and the movie came out when I was 10. And my folks wouldn't let me watch R-rated movies that young, so it was a couple years after that. And honestly, I remember being quite bored with it the first time around. I was kind of expecting it to be a nonstop action kind of Michael Bay shoot 'em up kind of movie, and it kind of flew over my head the first time that I saw it. So
Yeah.
It's a different Michael.
Similarly to me, I know for sure I saw it on VHS tape. My brother and I rented it, and we watched it at my grandparents' house. Or I should say, I tried to watch it because even though I was probably 12 when it came out, but probably 13 or so when it was on when it was available for rent. I'm pretty sure that my brother and I were really interested because, Val Kilmer's on the cover with a machine gun, and I don't know, it was just supposed to be a good movie and everything. And of course, the beginning is really exciting with the heist, and then there's the middle, which is just incredible. But I remember being really bored as a young kid and like stepping in and out of the movie a couple of times. And I think I want to say that I did watch it to the end, but I know for sure I left for huge chunks of time, probably to go play with toys or something like that, and then came back when I heard gunfire and stuff like that. So like I didn't have any, context for what was happening at the end, other than that Al Pacino was the cop and that De Niro is the robber, and they were, big showdown or whatever.
Yeah, I guess I was asking it because I don't have a recollection when I first saw it. I think it might have been. I recall being a kid. I'm slightly older, so maybe I was more like 14, 15 when it came out. Yeah, like 14. So I don't think I watched it back then, but I have this recollection of the diner scene, the with Al Pacino and
Yeah.
De Niro. I think that was like a famous scene and it kind of like went around, but I don't recall actually watching the whole movie. And it could have been the same kid thing that you guys had, where like it was such a long movie, it was so boring for a kid to try and like stay focused that entire time or understand what's all the what's up with all the adult complexities in it and what
Yeah.
does that have to do with action. I mean, come on. So
Come on.
yes, exactly. So which is a good sign for this movie. It's sort of like, Citizen Kane 2001, same thing. When I first watched those movies, like I was bored to tears. So so I don't really recall. I think it was at some point in the 2000s probably where I have my strongest recollection of seeing it. And more interestingly, I'm mostly curious to know when did I first notice that Matt was completely obsessed with it and that he thought it was one of the best movies of all time, because that seemed to play a big part in the narrative in the last at least 10 years for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure when
Actually,
that happened either.
actually, something that we should bring up in the second portion of the episode is I can actually honestly say that Heat is the entire reason why I actually know you two.
What?
No, we'll get into it, but
Okay.
it,
I guess there's
yeah.
spoilers.
Well,
Stay tuned, everyone. Matt's gonna explain.
it involves a coffee house scene, but
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, I
Uh,
see.
but it's one of those movies that, yeah, I mean, it is made for adults, and it's so deeply unique that I think that it kind of flies by a few people, but the fact that it took the time and the fact that there was so much subtlety in the performances from, I mean, particularly from Robert De Niro, the fact that there was so much attention to detail. I didn't get to see it in theaters until the New Beverly actually did a screening of it on 35 millimeter. Gil, I think I went with you for that one.
For which one? Where was it?
At the New Beverly, they did a,
Oh, we saw Heat there. So
yeah.
maybe that's when was that? Because I think maybe that's when it started, like the
Uh,
obsession.
I don't remember. I was obsessed with Heat before that, but especially the bank heist sequence in the middle of the movie.
Well,
That's when
everybody's
you,
obsessed with that.
yeah, that's when you really get like the sound design. I mean, it's like Bonnie and Clyde level sound design. The direction is superb. The uh, I mean, you get the geography, you understand what's going on, you understand the stakes at every given moment, and just the subtle moments, like Al Pacino saying, "Watch your background." Like, oh, okay, you know, that's something that cops say. Just make sure that you're not going to shoot anybody behind the guy that's shooting at you. That there's an extra layer to it when you're a police officer that the robbers don't have to worry about, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it's just really well done and really meticulously made. And Michael Mann is kind of notorious for doing that kind of research and being that fastidious. And he finally had the time, the money, and the resources to put all that on screen. And
The clout.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I,
Um,
needless to say, I'm going to give a positive review. So,
yeah. So
uh,
let's get into it. So what is your rating for it? Does it crack the perfection?
no, no. Okay, so if you ask me to review it, I think like 2006, maybe 2004 or something like that. I probably would have given it a perfect 10. One thing that stuck out to me was that there were two consecutive scenes in the movie where major plot points were just kind of like, well, they just happened to be there, rather than it's like what Matt and Trey talked about as like and then moments. And then this happened, and it wasn't like a because this happened. Uh,
You'll have to talk about those later. I
yeah,
can only think of one, and it's not even that
right.
big of a plot point.
Yeah. So I mean, there are flaws in the movie, but I boost it. When we talk about like pitching movies, yeah, we always talk about like, okay, this movie meets this movie, and I mean, Heat is just so ambitious and so unique that I got to give it a few extra points for that. So I think it's like an 8.5 to a 9 for me.
Really?
That's
So,
it, huh?
so on IMDb, would you press the 8 or would you press the 9?
I would press the 9.
Okay, so yeah, so I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, because I back back then, I think the rating that I had for it was from back then when I used to do ratings, maybe from that New Beverly screening, and I gave it a 7. And I think it was mostly because I was like, it's a good action movie. It's epic in length, but not boring. Back in when I saw it at the New Beverly, but just nothing tremendous, or at least I didn't see more to it at the time. And maybe I was just misreading it in some way at the time, or at least not going a bit deeper. But this time around, I sort of got it. Like I got that it's more than just a cops and robbers movies. It's sort of like the cops and robbers movie. It's almost like, which we mentioned this in one of our talks before about Michael Mann. I guess the Red Dragon Manhunter thing. That Michael Mann has this almost Kubrick level obsession, and Kubrick is famous for doing the comedy, the war movie, the whatever the movie is, science fiction movie. Like nothing is like just another movie, like the anti-war movie. So I feel like Michael Mann really tried to accomplish a Kubrick level type of thing. Like I'm gonna make the cops and robbers movie, and I'm gonna just like put everything into it, and I think he kind of succeeds. It's still I would bump it up from a 7 to an 8.
I would have always thought that this movie, Heat and Last of the Mohicans, are Michael Mann's two best films. And every time I watch one of them, I feel that is his best film. And then I'll watch the other one, and I'll be like, no, there's no way. This one's the best one. And then I'll go back and watch the other one, and I'll be like, what was I thinking? This was the best one. And I just keep going back and forth. And yeah, tonight is definitely no exception to that. It's a really great movie. I just finished watching it, and yeah, I don't know. I'd put it like a 9.
All right.
Impressive. I'm surprised you're not as obsessed with it as Matt.
Well, I mean, it's I don't know. I really like it. I don't know if Matt likes to talk about it a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
It's a weird obsession, but I guess we can get
it's
into it.
I guess the only reason I wouldn't say that it's perfect, aside from, I mean, obviously it has some problems, of course, but nothing that I don't think it has any big problems, honestly, like none. But I'll say that like it's not as accessible as a lot of other films are, and that I think that's important for movies to be accessible, because otherwise I don't think it's the most important thing, obviously, that doesn't need to be, but like I think that a lot of people would be turned off by it because it's just not their thing. So I mean, whatever, but that's not a huge negative thing. It's just a thing worth mentioning.
But is it though? Because I feel like, as far as pacing is concerned, this feels to me more in the, Lawrence of Arabia, Braveheart, Dark Knight a little bit, even The Shining, types of movies that get close to the 3 hours. Some of them are over 3 hours, and are not really boring if you're with it. Like they're not too slow. Like this movie is not, it's not Manhunter slow, I feel like. Um, so one thing. So I really feel like it's fairly accessible.
Well,
as
I
far
mean,
as
on the that's why I
for
would say it's a
adults, like we
9.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
adults.
there's yeah, I mean, there's some people who yeah, I don't know, whatever. It's not. I agree with you. It's
No,
not
no,
worth
it's not. I'm
quibbling
not
over
trying
little
to start
things.
an
Yeah.
argument. I'm
No,
just
no, I
curious.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Um.
you know, I'd say that there's well, think about it this way. Even for adults, right? No, we're not, even if we take people who are not like young teenagers or kids or whatever, if people were going into the movie with the wrong expectations just based off of previous films they've seen with the cast and maybe the trailer or something like that, I mean, you could be a little turned off by it, even though I agree with you. It's not a poorly paced movie. It's just a deliberately paced movie. And it's not Michael Bay paced, you know. But I don't know, whatever. I mean, I really like it. I think it's a 9.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really sticks out about the movie is that if you saw the movie for the first time when you were like 12 like I was, or 14 like Jason or something like that, again, a lot of us did kind of just go back to the screen once we heard gunfire. And so much of what's great about the movie is all the stuff leading up to the gunfire. Like they really set everything up, and and it's even one of those things where there are certain things that are set up, and you can actually experience the action sequence and still think, oh, wait a minute, how did all this unfold? And then the next scene, there's just a little moment. Sometimes it's just visual, tells you everything that you need to know. So you actually need to have your eyes on the screen for 3 hours. And a lot of people, especially people who are younger than us, don't seem to be into that as much ananymore. But
Who knows? I mean, I guess that's why we do this, to hopefully encourage them to
yeah,
seek it out, because we all three of us like it quite a bit.
yes,
And
young
it's
people, young people, get your shit, get your shit together.
I think
Exactly.
it goes without saying that if you haven't seen this movie, definitely go see it before you listen to the rest of this.
Oh yes, because
Yes.
we'll be getting to the spoilers soon, I guess. Is there
Yeah.
anything else as far as so I guess that seals the recommendation. One thing I would not recommend related to this movie is actually I would, depending, especially if you're a film student, but the movie that preceded it, the TV movie LA Takedown, which was the initial reiteration of this, that was based off of Michael Mann's first script, and was truncated from 180 pages apparently into like a 90-minute movie, which like it
Whoa.
works, but it definitely doesn't work in the same way as Heat. And especially if you know both movies, you see where stuff was completely like rushed and shrunk, and yeah. But
Wow.
it's an
Yeah.
interesting study in like how it's almost like not Red Dragon and Manhunter, but at least like it's even more extreme than that. It just shows like how the efficiency of a TV movie, and taking a 180-page script and trying to squeeze it into like almost half the the time, is just not easy. There's still a
Yeah.
movie, it's out there, but it's not Heat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was watching LA Takedown, all I could think of was I envy Michael Mann so much, because how many directors, writer directors, get the opportunity to like get a dry run,
Hmm.
like make a full movie, make all the mistakes, and learn from all those mistakes, and then make the real movie 6 years later.
I know there's a couple other examples of that, but none that are jumping to my mind right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think the story is that I don't know if he first intended it to be a feature, but then later on tried to make it into a pilot for a TV show, and then when that didn't work, then he tried to at least get the movie done. like the TV movie done, and because he was a writer on TV for like years, and then I think once he got some clout, like I think once he made, because he made Manhunter before LA Takedown, and then after LA Takedown, I think he did The Last of the Mohicans, and maybe when that was successful or he proved himself, which I don't know why, because I actually don't like that movie, but that's maybe it could be its own episode someday.
Blasphemy.
Yeah, I know. I rated it a 6, by the way. I've actually, speaking of which, I think The Insider is actually like Michael Mann's best movie, but I think Insider, Collateral, Heat, and I think that's it. Like all three of those I've rated an 8, and then everything else is below. But yeah, he doesn't
Matt,
have a 9 for me yet.
what are your what are your top 5 or whatever? Where do you place all his movies?
Heat is easily number 1. Collateral number 2. Last of the Mohicans probably number 3. But I mean that's like back and forth with The Insider. Then Manhunter, and then he switched to digital and forgot how to make movies. So yeah,
What about Ali?
he switched to digital and forgot how to make movies.
Oh, I forgot that. Yeah. Okay, go on.
Was it digital?
Yeah,
I did not remember it being so.
But
I'll
Collateral,
take
by
your
the
word
way,
for it.
Collateral was digital.
it
Collateral's
was
amazing.
it was a mixture of film and digital.
Oh, so that's what saved the movie.
Yeah,
Apparently.
yeah.
Lubeski did Ali.
Mhm.
I remember it being a good-looking movie.
I like that movie. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's just not amazing, but in any case, yeah. What about Jason? Did you do your rankings of his?
Oh well, the very first thing I said about it was that I thought it and Last of the Mohicans were my favorites. I guess yeah, I'd probably say well, okay, since I just watched Heat, I'd say Heat, Last of the Mohicans, Collateral, um uh definitely The Insider after that. Then probably Manhunter. I didn't see LA Takedown. But then Ali, Black Hat, and I haven't seen enough of Miami Vice to really say that I've seen it. So
Not to digress, but actually, well, it's directly relevant. Um, so
You
so
do
I
this
guess
sometimes. You'll say that, and
I
then you're like, "Well, this is what the podcast is about." So
yeah, right. But um, Heat and LA Takedown were actually based off of real people. There's a real Vincent Hanna, and there was a real Neil McCauley. There actually was this whole dynamic between a detective and a robber that Michael Mann really took the time and the effort to dissect, and actually based these two fictional characters off of these same people, off of these real people. And I mean, Noel Macaulay's real death wasn't as dramatic as it was in Heat or anything, but like there are just certain scenes in the movie that are actually based off of real moments that happened, where Neil McCauley was so sharp that he just heard a clunk that he wasn't expecting to hear, and he was that on it that he just took his crew out, didn't steal anything, and Vincent had to let him go because he wouldn't be able to actually charge him with anything. All those things actually happened in real life, again in less dramatic fashion. But
do you know if the real Vincent Hanna is like a borderline manic crazy person?
actually, that's another fun thing about Michael Mann. By the way, for anybody who ends up listening to this, yes, I I've seen this movie probably like 50 times. I've
Jesus.
actually
It's a
I
long movie to watch that many times.
yeah.
Yeah.
There might be 5 people on the planet who know more trivia about this movie than I do. So,
Oh, I don't know
just
about that. But go on.
just so you know.
Well,
But
I know a few bits of trivia because of the but
yeah,
never mind. Yeah,
Go
because
on.
yeah.
sorry, but Jason, what was your question again? Uh,
Nothing. It was more of a joke. Keep going.
okay. Something that stuck out to me about LA Takedown that was clearly a compromise was just the age of the actual characters. Like in LA Takedown, they talk about Vincent Hanna being 30 years old. The real Vincent Hanna, when he was actually tracking down Neil McCauley, was closer to the Al Pacino age. And that just creates this multi-layered complexity to the character, having an older character. I mean, forget the fact that Al Pacino is a better actor than who's it, what's it, Scott Plank. You know, but but the fact that he's older and Neil McCauley is older, you just understand it, to a certain extent, that, okay, these are guys who have been around the block. They have the experience. You understand how these guys are as good as they are, and they're not just like these random prodigies that bypass the entire ranking system and just arose to the status that they are. These are guys who are battle hardened. These are guys who have had this rough life and have gotten to this point that they are in. And I think that Heat was always the movie that Michael Mann wanted to make, but he took the chance to make LA Takedown, in 1989, because that's what people were willing to throw $1 million at him to go ahead and make. But just one observation that I made.
We can kind of work our way back from that because you mentioned about the fact that he dies in the end, the Neil character, which is Patrick in LA Takedown.
Yeah.
Not to spend too much time on LA Takedown, but it is interesting. It was interesting that it was a different ending, because it completely changes the meaning of the movie. Not completely, but at least in the way he gets there. Because and then we can work our way back to analyze the rest of the movie. But like in Heat, he has the love interest, right? And
Yeah.
and he tells her, he gives her the option of leaving, but she chooses not to leave. And then when he gets the tip about Jameson, or what's his
Yeah.
face,
Wayne Grove.
Raingrove, like the code name Jameson, being in the hotel, he has to make a decision. Is he going to let it go and escape for the good life in New Zealand or wherever, or is he going to go get Wayne Grove? And he's an idiot. I mean, everybody has their flaws, and that's his flaw. He's too vengeful, so he goes to kill him, and that's what spoils the whole thing, because then and it perfectly, of course, aligns with the whole line that's planted earlier in the movie about having to like split in 10 seconds, 30 seconds notice from everything that you
Yeah.
know, in order to like live, even though it doesn't actually help him at the end, but gives him a second chance of that. So he has to run away from the woman, and then in the LA Takedown, she's just not in the car. Like, basically, you don't even see her say no. He tells her, you have to make a decision. Cut to, like much of that movie, basically, everything is very truncated. He's like alone in the car. So she basically said no. So when he gets the call about Wayne Grove, obviously he's going to go there because he's got nothing to live for. Like the one love that he found wasn't interested in escaping with him. So and in that movie, when he dies in the hotel, again truncating everything, not too many locations, he dies
Yeah.
like in front of the door to the hotel room. He actually never gets to kill Wayne Grove there too, so he doesn't get his revenge. So I guess Michael Mann punishes him, in a way. Like, he never gets his revenge, he never gets his satisfaction, and he dies. And then like Vincent like pities him, says like, why did you do this? Like, you could have like been gone. and then he tells him like, oh, there's nothing to to live for, like to leave for. It's what's the point? All I live for is this, to commit crimes or like commit vengeance on this asshole that like ruined my whole like and stuff. And it's a different meaning. I think Heat is the better ending because there was also a lot more setup for it. But it's a very concise point to make about the fact that these two people, whether it's like Vincent or Neil or Patrick, and the his name I think in the LA Takedown, is it's the whole thing about like this is all they know. Like they don't know how to be normal people. All they know is to either be a cop or be a robber. They don't know anything else, and that's why they're stuck in this bad cycle. So I found it interesting that he did that.
The thing that really stuck out to me when I was watching LA Takedown was the line, "You're proud of me. What the hell are you proud of me for?" In LA Takedown, that was given to Vincent. In Heat, that was Dennis Hasbert's character, Donald. And it is so much more important coming out of Dennis Hasbert's mouth than out of Vincent's character. I mean,
considering what a small role he has, it's a really, really good scene.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the most tragic characters I can think of, uh, especially given that he only had like 15 minutes of screen time, maybe.
Yeah.
He just carried that role so well.
Mm-hmm.
I will say one thing, and I do like that subplot. There's a lot of subplots in this movie, and he gives more weight to some characters more than others. But the one thing I feel like that's maybe imperfect about the movie is we get to know at least 4 or 3 out of the the robbers intimately, but we only get to know Vincent very well. You don't get to know the other cops that well.
I think go ahead.
No, mostly I'm just thinking, I wonder, and I might be wrong, I wonder if they do present scenes with the cops hanging out together. But I do wonder if more was put into the cops, then it would be truly a cops and robbers, not cop and robbers.
Yeah. I think that they just chose to show the lives of the robbers more. But I mean, it I don't know how much ended up on the cutting room floor or whatever, but I think you one of the things I was going to say about this movie is that one of the things I love about it, and I did not get this the first couple of times I watched it. It was not until I really sat down and watched it that I realized that the crew that Al Pacino has, his little all the cops that are working in his little department, his little task force, I guess you could say, whatever. That you could see that they definitely all have very unique characters, and they're very, for what little time they have, they're pretty well developed. They just don't give them as much time to live on the screen as the robbers. I would be curious to see if there wasn't more of their characters that existed, like, even if it was just simply Michael Mann telling each one of them their backstories and stuff like that.
Actually, Jason, I think you kind of mentioned something about Hannah being like high strung and
Manic.
manic and everything. One thing that Michael Mann is particularly known for, you might know that in Collateral, he actually wrote 30 pages of character backstories for both, surprise, surprise, another Vincent and Max in Collateral, like, giving Tom Cruise's whole backstory on why he's so into jazz. That never showed up on screen, but it's just something for the actor to understand and embody. There's actually a draft of the script that obviously never got shot for Heat, in which Vincent Hanna is a cocaine addict.
Oh, I was going to say I'm almost certain that
Yeah,
his direction that he gave him was you're on coke.
yeah,
I mean, like
Which
there's a
is
line.
very very easy
Yeah,
for Al Pacino to play. Yeah.
probably. I mean, there's a line that it's John Voight when he's
yeah,
handing the dossier that he's made on Hannah. He's John Voight is he's like a friend, or he's like the guy who gets all the info or whatever, the jobs
yeah,
or whatever for the robbers for
yeah.
Robert De Niro's crew.
For
They have a
Macaulay,
scene,
yeah,
yeah, they have a scene where they're in a car together and they've just realized that that the heat is on them, and they've gotten all this info on them, and so he's telling it. It's the good moment that mirrors the other one where they're talking about Macaulay's character. They're talking about Robert De Niro, so it mirrors that, and he's telling him about what kind of a person Al Pacino's character is, and they're talking about how, gosh, look at this, and they're kind of figuring out that like he's got to be somebody with no life whatsoever. Like look at this kind of thing and this kind of thing and this kind of thing. In the midst of all of that, he does say this guy was a Marine, and then he went to this kind of department. Then he spent this many years doing narcotics, and then he transferred to major crimes and this kind of stuff that he's doing now, where he's running a task force to take down these guys who do these like big heists and stuff like that. And
mhm,
so it's like they're laying the groundwork there. That I mean, because it's a pretty well known fact that a lot of these people who these police officers who have to go undercover and do all this work against these narcotics cartels and whatever, all these people, the traffickers and whatever, they have to kind of know what they're getting into. And there's all sorts of stories of people getting hooked on stuff while they're trying to do that. I mean, and he plays it like he's on coke for sure. I mean,
yeah.
like like
Yeah, it's a
half of the
very
best lines of the movie are
very
him just yelling stuff.
very
Because she's
Scarface
got a
almost like at
great
times.
ass, and you got your head all the way up it.
Give me all you got. Give me all you got.
There's definitely a phase in his career where he was getting very loud, but I give him credit for being tame enough most of the time. Like it was a very nuanced performance, just with those mild outbursts. I guess
Well,
manic outbursts.
but I have heard many people criticize Pacino's later career as being a guy who just yells a lot, and
Mm,
I would argue if you look at his, I could be wrong, but I think if you look at his filmography and everything and look at the progression of things, I think it was this movie where he's kind of started doing a lot of the yelling stuff, and it's probably because that's kind of what some people wanted to see, what some directors wanted to see after seeing this movie and this performance and whatever. And so I mean, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I would argue that yes, some of his lesser movies that came after this in say between late 90s early 2000s or whatever probably did suffer from that, but I think this movie gets it just right. Like he is crazy, but it's like Gil just said, there is definitely a nuanced performance
yeah,
going on
well,
there.
yeah. I actually, this might be a good segue for me to explain exactly what
Yes.
I meant when I said that. You know, y'all know that I went to Montana State for my freshman year of college,
Uh-huh.
and I was in my second semester, and one of my professors went on, I shit you not, like a 10-minute long rant about how the coffee house scene was completely wasted
Oh yeah.
because you've got Al Pacino and you've got Robert De Niro, and it's the first time that they're going to be on screen together, and they're just sitting there talking, and like nobody's actually emoting, nobody's actually doing anything, nobody's really and I sat there for 10 minutes, and literally I walked out of that and started looking at other colleges. I I I I,
Oh, I see. So that's what brought you to Columbia College Hollywood, where the three of us all
yes,
met. Okay.
yes.
That's okay. So we had nothing to do with it.
Right. No, no,
Ah,
no. That was the moment that I decided to transfer. Was when a professor
wow.
went on a rant about how the coffee house scene, which is one of the greatest scenes in cinema history, was wasted because Al Pacino and Robert De Niro weren't shouting at each other or some bullshit.
Let me
Yeah.
it's interesting because you bring that up. Let me just kind of comment real quickly on that because
Yeah.
I I agree with you. I think it's a great scene. I think it's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's the two of them doing some of the best acting they've ever done, probably. I don't know. I love it. I love every bit of it. But I have definitely had people tell me some problems they have, not just with that scene, but with the whole movie altogether. And I kind of wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this, really. But because I've had this conversation with some people recently, I was looking for it this time, and it's never more apparent than in that scene. But this movie is basically that whole thing where it's like they're definitely pushing this idea that Pacino, the cop, and De Niro, the robber, are the same. They're very similar people and whatever, and whatever. But they're just on two different sides of the law, and everything. They're like the mirror image of each other and whatever. Well, so they get these two fantastic actors to do the whole, the parts and whatever. But it's like as if I don't know how they filmed it all, the whole movie, but it's like as if Michael Mann had a mission or something because the two of them never share a proper two shot in the entire
Yeah.
movie. And it's kind of odd because at first it's just kind of normal, but then by the time you get to that coffee shop scene, it feels really intentional and almost in a frustrating sort of way.
Uh,
And I don't know if maybe has something to do with what your professor was saying, but I mean, I personally don't think it ruins that scene. I don't think it ruins the movie in
no,
any way or anything like that. But I guess this time, I'll just say this: as I was watching it this time, there was there was a thing in the middle of the scene where I kind of thought, if I was editing this, this is where I would cut to a two shot. But anyway, that's just my thoughts
they actually did film a two shot and decided not to use it.
for that
Uh,
scene.
yes, actually they did a 3 camera setup, two shot, and the two
The two over the shoulders.
over the shoulders. I think if I remember properly, they shot 13 takes, and they were rolling all 3 cameras for all 13 takes, and almost the entire scene was cut from take 11,
Oh,
and they just decided not to use the two shot. The decision was really deliberate, that they wanted Pacino and De Niro very clearly playing off of each other's mannerisms and movements at every given moment. And I think that the ultimate decision when it came to the two shot was that it was actually kind of removing some of the gravity from the scene. But
well, it's not just that. I mean, that's the scene where it's most obvious. But once you get that in your brain and you go, gosh, maybe they're trying to intentionally not show it, it starts popping up in other scenes. Like when he pulls him over right before that scene, it's like they're showing shots of their faces. It cuts to Pacino, and um there's this kind of a long shot of him slowly getting out of the car, getting his
mhm.
gun out, getting it ready, but his head is cut off because the action that we're looking at is his hand and the what's in the background, which is the car. That's what we want to be. I'm not saying it's a bad shot; it's a great shot, but it's like they deliberately have his head cut off. Then it walks with him to the car, and then it pans around his body so that we don't only just see De Niro's face in the mirror, but then we see his face as he looks up and sees Hannah for the first time. Um, so it's like we get De Niro clearly in that shot, but then it cuts to the other angle, and in the opposite angle, we have a full shot of De Niro's face in the foreground, but it's extremely out of focus.
A few years later, they made the movie Righteous Kill
Well, that movie was
with
terrible.
with Pacino and De Niro. They had all kinds of scenes with De Niro and Pacino, and having them both clearly in focus in the same shot, and it was a piece of shit. So
I'm not saying the
yeah.
anyway.
I think Matt is offended right now.
That
by
movie is
these,
one of the
proclamations,
Still is
Jason.
easily one of the 10 biggest disappointments I've ever seen of any movie ever. Yeah, I don't know. It's just I could be totally wrong. Maybe maybe everyone's reading too much into this that's ever talked about it. But like even at the end when they have their little confrontation and whatever, it's like the very last shot of the movie that he reaches out for his hand, it's an insert. And it's a great moment. They're like,
Yeah.
he grabs his hand in like a fraternal sort of way, and everything. And it's like powerful, cuts to his face reacting, and then cuts to a 2-shot. And it's like one of the only 2 shots they're actually both in, but it's the camera's looking at De Niro and it's Al Pacino's back. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't have any problem with it, to be honest. I think the movie's just fine. It doesn't take me out of it or anything like that, but it's a little odd. It's a
Well, it
little
seems like
odd
it's all
that they
very
seem to
intentional, though. Like, wouldn't
but
it be
what are they
if they
trying to
had?
do?
I mean,
Yeah.
separating them, like,
No, sorry, Gil, you go ahead.
no, I was gonna say
yeah.
differentiating them. I'm actually surprised they did over the shoulders and not singles. In the coffee. I think
Yeah.
that's some close-ups there, so there's some singles. But yeah, if you're trying to like show that these are two opposites of the same coin, maybe you do a thing where you don't put them in the frame at the same time. You just present them. Not to mention, and I want to know, does De Niro's beard in this the first time that the whole evil beard thing got started? Because he's got the evil beard. So was that the thing that like Pacino's cleanly shaved, but he's got the evil, I don't know what it was, Ben Affleck beard or something?
The little the goatee.
Yeah, the whole circle around the
Oh my
mouth.
gosh, that's funny.
So
I
maybe
never
that's
thought
funny.
that's
about that.
so because
That's
you were saying
funny.
they're the same person, just one ended up going one direction and one went in the other, but they're both brilliant, smart people that are very good at what they do. They just do the opposite, you know.
Kind of like the Spooky Vision episode of South Park where all the kids
Yes,
from the
exactly.
alternate universe had beards, have like Neil Macaulay beards.
And I
Yeah,
will say
know,
a couple of last things I will say about LA Takedown is I think that scene. Another thing to study is like you watch that scene and obviously the acting is not as good
yeah.
as these two. So if nothing else, just watch that just to appreciate what they did in that scene, or at least your professor should do that. And um,
Yeah.
but I will say even in that scene and even with the acting not being as stellar, it comes across that there's a level of appreciation, that there's a fraternal thing that comes together in the end. So it's all in the writing for sure, but yes, there's more nuance that goes into it, and there's definitely more ups and downs emotionally with the and it's a longer scene with the Heat version. And then one last thing I will say is shout out to like Michael Rooker, who was in LA Takedown. But
Oh yeah.
yeah. But aside from that, I'm
Love
done.
Michael Rooker.
Surprisingly small role too.
Yeah, I guess it was like early on in
uh,
his career, so it's like
yeah.
I think it was
Uh,
Bosco, right?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing that got me about actually one thing that stuck out to me actually my first year at Columbia, I was in that acting class, and I actually ended up performing the role of Neil Macaulay in the coffee house scene.
Oh wow, this
uh,
goes way back, huh?
Who was your other
Mark Heath played Vincent Hanna,
interesting?
and the thing is, actually in the script for Heat that I had on hand, they didn't have the monologues about their recurring dreams. Where
Yeah,
Hannah
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
talking about, they've got these big black eyeballs because they've got 8-ball hemorrhages from the head wounds, and there I am with these big balloon people because and so on and so forth. That actually wasn't in the script that was available, so that must have been something that was just added really late in the process of actually making the movie.
I love that part too, where they both
Yeah,
talk about their dreams. The
yeah,
That's actually the part where I would have cut to a two shot, because I think if I, and again, I could be reading way too much into this, but if I think about it to myself about this movie, having just watched it, I feel like you said, two sides of the coin, whatever, and so on and so forth. They're trying to show the distinction between them while showing their similarities and all that stuff, right? So it's like we keep the separation in the first part when they sit down for coffee and they
mhm,
start talking and they talk about themselves and whatever, all this stuff.
mhm,
But then about like once they both kind of open up about stuff, then they've now discussed things about their lives with each other, and that's the moment where they're just sitting there and Al Pacino starts talking about his dream, and then De Niro talks about his, and they both just kind of have this moment. And I'm trying to
mhm.
remember what exactly comes right after that, because there's a moment before he says the line where he starts talking about, like, now I've seen you and I've sat down across from you and I wouldn't want to have to kill you and so on and so forth. But
Yeah,
there is something between those two. I can't remember what, but that was the moment I thought. I was like, right when they start talking
mhm,
about their dreams, up to that moment, uh, they're they're kind of like just two regular guys talking now. That's when I would have cut to a two shot. And then the moment Al Pacino kind of sits forward and just goes, "Look, like if it comes between you and some poor guy that whose wife you're going to turn into a widow," now he's warning him.
brother, you are
That's
going down.
yeah, exactly.
And then
Once he
there's a flip
starts,
side to that coin.
yeah, yeah. Once
Say I,
Pacino
yeah,
starts that moment, that's when it should have gone back into like the single, over the shoulders and stuff like that. But right in the middle, there's like a middle section of that scene. Personally, I've never seen the footage. I don't know, maybe it wasn't as good, but just my thought would be that would have been the appropriate moment.
for
I
the
think
two
that
shot.
I,
Yeah,
I'm on the exact opposite side. I think that it was actually a really brilliant decision to never have that two shot, to always keep them isolated uh, in the frame for the audience. I mean, these are two guys who the audience has to evaluate them individually at every given moment, at any given time. And the fact that these people are, the heads and tails of a coin, I think that I think that it was a very deliberate and very smart decision to keep them at that distance visually through the entire movie. I could be wrong. People can attack me in the comments section when we publish this.
The overflowing
But
comment section.
yeah.
yeah,
It's
right.
so sweet that you think anyone's ever gonna hear this.
Uh,
Yeah, but
yeah, well, just to piss off Matt a bit, I will say I somewhat agree with. I don't agree with your professor, but that scene to me is not even remotely close, and maybe this is where the difference is between us, remotely close to being one of the best scenes in movie history, because it is just two people in a coffee shop. And there have been some really good scenes of two people in a coffee shop, and this is one of the best ones. But it is true that it's not a bombastic scene. It's the fact that they are in public and have to be civil, and also sort of are flirting with each other, that it makes the scene interesting. But as far as like meat, there's not a lot of meat in the scene. Let's face it. It's there's not a lot of Oscar clip moments here. There's better acting in the movie from both of them. I honestly feel some of the line readings, like, There's a flip cone in that." I some of that stuff actually kind of, De Niro in general to me feels a bit too one note actor at times, but he's just very focused. So I appreciate that, but it's very good. It's just that it's the scene is what it is, but it's been better scenes done. It's just that because of the gravity they bring to the scene, it makes it special.
Well, I mean, you're wrong, but I mean, but I mean, the thing is, the fact that it's not bombastic, but it's surrounded by so much, the context of the scene, everything leading up to the scene, everything that came after the scene, the entire gravity of everything that this relationship between these two characters comes to fruition in that scene. And not only that, yeah, they are in a public place, so they do have to be civil. And I mean, no, you don't get the Oscar clip because most people who vote for the Oscars are fucking morons.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't handle the truth in this scene because they have to be civil to each other, but you can see it in their mannerisms and in their performances that that desire to shout is there, but they know that they can't do it. They know that this isn't the right time to do it. They know that this is the moment to sit down and actually understand one another. That's the brilliance of the scene. That's why it's one of the best scenes in cinema history. It is because they don't have the Oscar clips.
Yeah, no, it's for sure. It's definitely subtle. There's no doubt. And again, I said Pacino, which I think I've liked his performance better in this movie because he has more colors to it and still being very subtle. But yeah, and generally I do like De Niro. Nah, I'm not sure. De Niro has some really good performance, but yeah, I guess that's an interesting question. Who do you think is better, like in your opinion, over the course of their careers?
Kilmer.
I
No.
think I think De Niro's a little bit better, but I think Al Pacino is an incredible actor.
I think De Niro. I mean, Taxi Driver is in my top 10. It's like an amazing performance, and
Yeah.
Raging Bull is also a good performance. There's a lot of good ones, but you know what? I don't think he was amazing in The Godfather. I think Al Pacino's performance in The Godfather like blows him out of the fucking water, and I think he won the Oscar for it, De Niro, if I'm not mistaken, or at least was nominated.
Yeah.
I don't know. I need to watch The Godfather 2 again because I really thought that he was kind of meh, especially
I
compared
really
to
want to watch that one
Brando.
again too.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Pacino has the whole. He's got the Serpico, the A Dog Day Afternoon. Like he's got some, he's got the Scarface. He's got like really colorful performances, and yes, some of them are over the top, but in a good way. So at times, and sometimes not. And then De Niro is a bit too subtle. They are different actors, so maybe it's tough to compare them. He's a bit too subtle at times, De Niro.
One thing that also is kind of interesting, and especially since Alec Baldwin is now facing a lot of civil lawsuits for shooting somebody on set, that bank heist sequence in Heat is easily one of the greatest examples of not only uh, how well gun safety, when practiced well on a film set, can actually work, but also uh, they actually put the actors in that scene through urban warfare training. So and that's a big difference between LA Takedown and Heat. When they had that sequence in Heat, they were actually the robbers were actually doing the whole cover it cover advance cover advance cover advance throughout the entire sequence. And also apparently Val Kilmer got so good at reloading his gun that he was actually faster than some of the military guys who were training them.
Useful.
It's definitely a great scene.
Yeah. Just worth bringing up that we, people in Hollywood actually practice gun safety pretty well, and sometimes we create great art in the process of doing that. So,
Yeah, well, they make movies with guns all the time. Yeah, no
yeah,
doubt. I mean, um,
but
but yeah, as far as like, it's funny you say Val Kilmer, because it is interesting that I think, if I'm not mistaken, his character is the only one that gets away in both movies. Still, but at a cost. Actually, at a cost in
yeah,
Heat, not at a cost in LA Takedown. And LA Takedown is the whole wife thing never happens. He's basically gonna get better and maybe see his wife. But yeah, I guess he survives in both, but it's more tragic in Heat because he has to walk away from his life.
I wish you guys had told me to watch this movie.
Oh no, it's okay. You can watch it after if you wanted to. It's just funny to watch it, and I just wanted to see what's the whole
yeah.
thing about it. Yeah, I think Michael Mann said something about like comparing between LA Takedown and Heat is like comparing between like frozen coffee and something blue Jamaican like
Jamaican
Colombian.
Blue Mountain.
Yeah, Jamaican Blue Mountain, whatever. I would have just said water and coffee,
Huh.
but in any case, yeah, like basically water from like a dirty pond. But basically, he says like that. I think LA Takedown was 9 days of prep and 19 days of shooting and
Uh,
or something like that.
I've got it in front of me.
Yeah,
LA Takedown had 10 days of pre-production and 19 days for a shooting schedule. Heat had 6 months of pre-production and 117 days on the
Damn.
yeah.
shooting
So
schedule.
you definitely can't
So,
compare between the
117
two.
days.
Yeah,
yeah.
Wow.
it's like shooting a big action movie, basically, 100
Yeah.
plus days. Um,
Golly.
yeah, no, but it's no, it definitely shows. But
Uh,
as far as like analyzing the movie, like sort of what it's about and stuff, it is interesting that the way the fate of all the people there, like the Tom Sizemore's character, like he makes the mistake of gambling one more time and then he loses his life in the process, and Val Kilmer is I guess in some ways like the only one that doesn't die but still loses something in the process. The
Mm.
both who's his, Denny Trejo and
yeah.
the other one, the um,
Yeah.
Donald Breeden, the
Everybody
one who
dies.
everybody pretty much dies,
Terrible
except for like
deaths.
Waingro in LA Takedown survives, but then he gets prosecuted or something. Like
Mm.
Hannah kind of
Mhm.
like tell him that he's screwed. And yeah, and one other thing that was interesting is that he did bring one character with him from LA Takedown, and the one who played Waingro ends up playing the guy who cheats on with Al Pacino's
Yeah.
wife.
Oh yeah.
Hank Azaria?
No.
Ronald? No. Xander Berkeley.
Oh, Xander Berkeley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ralph. Yeah,
Ralph.
Ralph.
Yeah.
Ralph something. Yeah.
Ralph, sit down.
Man.
You know what was funny
Yeah.
to me too is like when he takes the TV, like how much did a TV cost back then that it was so important to take the TV?
It wasn't about the cost.
Yeah, it was
about the
about
fact
like
that it
him
was his
watching it.
TV. No,
Yeah.
that was like the
Uh,
only thing in the house that was his.
Yeah, it's like
But it's funny you mentioned Xander Berkeley. Like one of the things I love, I mean, I genuinely love about this movie is not just, I mean, it has a stellar cast, like a really stellar cast, but it's not just the big roles. Like, I mean, it's a cops and robbers movie, so you could say that basically the main characters are the crew of the robbers and the crew of the cops, even though we already established that the cops don't get as much, character development or anything like that. But still, those are who we're seeing most often. Even though we don't get as much of their characters, we see all of Hannah's crew working with him side by side all the time and so on and so forth to get a lot of screen time. But like throughout this movie, there are so many characters that have 2 or 3 scenes or sometimes one scene, and they find this incredible cast of characters to be, I mean, like you're like watching this movie, and it's like it doesn't matter how many times you've seen it. Suddenly you're watching. It's like, William Fichtner plays the Van Zandt character that they rob at the beginning, and it's like I don't even know what you'd call him. His enforcer, his thug, his like number 2 guy is like Henry Rollins, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh look, here's Henry Rollins. That's awesome. And then like you find out, it's like Val Kilmer's wife is the one who has the of all the significant others probably has the most story, and it's like they got the Judd for her, and then it's like she starts cheating on him, and it's like Hank Azaria. What is this? This is awesome. And then you keep going through the movie, and it's like they get the first clue that alerts Al Pacino to the thing. He goes and he gets the skinny guy, and he tells him like, oh, you got to meet us at this club at 2 a.m. And then his brother is Tone Loc, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then he's getting sewn up later after the shootout, and it's Jeremy Piven. And at the end, he's finally getting cheated on for one scene, and he's got Xander Berkeley. And I was like, oh my god, the people with like 2 minutes in this movie are just outstanding. I mean, maybe they weren't big names at the time in the 95 or something. I don't know. Maybe they were, but they're just like this. The cast of this movie, even the people who got like very small parts, they're just outstanding.
Yeah, I guess Michael Mann knows how to pick them.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to say, just because we recently talked about Michael Mann and Manhunter and all this stuff, and we recently I recently listened to it because Gil provided us with the clip and everything for all of that. This is incredibly petty of me to even bring this up, but I just when one of you guys mentioned that Tom Noonan is in this movie.
Yeah.
And the first thing I said was, I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. He's the guy in the wheelchair that gives them the information. And I was like, he looks so different in that movie. Doesn't he have a beard or something? You guys were like, no. And I'm watching tonight. And I was like,
didn't say
beard,
anything.
big ass beard. He's got a big Santa Claus beard.
No, I think you said in the recording, and we can go back to it, but that's like a mustache or something. And I remember watching the movie, it's like, oh, it's a beard.
He's got a big beard and mustache. He's got a big Santa Claus beard. Anyway.
I was literally editing the episode as I was watching Heat, like at the same days, like basically. So it was funny to see that.
I also Danny Trejo actually played a character named Trejo. So
I thought that was interesting. That's
yeah,
weird.
I thought there was more than one. Wasn't there more than one of those in the movie where they kind of like just gave the name to the actor?
Nothing I'm aware of.
It's possible.
But also, just another fun fact: Heat starts at a train station and ends at an airport, and Collateral starts at an airport and ends at a train station.
Interesting.
But yeah.
I wanted to get your guys' opinion on this. All right. Ever since the first time I ever saw this movie, one of the things that stuck out to me was the relationship between De Niro and Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
It's very clear, even though there aren't any lines that are like, we met back in such and such and we've been friends ever since or something like that. There's no stupid things like that. But it's incredibly clear when you watch the movie that out of their crew, the two of them are very close. Like, I mean, they've been working with Tom Sizemore for a while, and he's very close to them. They all hang out. They go to restaurants together and whatever. And Danny Trejo's their wheelman, and he's very close to them too. And they're all very chummy and buddy and whatever. But like Val Kilmer and De Niro are friends. They're like legit friends. He comes in and stays at his house when he's having marital problems. I mean, like they're genuine friends of each other. And I never questioned it. I never thought anything of it. I just always assumed in the scene where Neil De Niro, he's doing something. I can't remember what, and he just happens to randomly find or see Ashley Judd coming out of like a hotel room or something, with Hank Azaria. And he goes and he busts the door down and he has his whole speech where he tells her, he's like, he says she's like yelling at him, saying she's sick of the of the Val Kilmer and she doesn't want him anymore and all this stuff like that. And he stops her and he just says, look, he says, you're going to give him one more chance. And she doesn't want to do it at first. And he interrupts her and he just says, if you do, he says, you give him one more chance. And if he screws up again, I will finance you and your kid. And I will set you up to leave him and get away and do what you got to do, kind of thing. In that scene, I always just read that as he's that good of a friend and he's got money and whatever. And it's funny that years later, I recently heard some people, this might have even been on a podcast, I don't remember, but some other people were talking about that scene and they had a totally different read of it. I had never heard anyone say this before, but now I kind of question myself because they were convinced, they said that they found that scene so interesting because they saw it as Neil, Robert De Niro's character, is so professional. And he, at this point in the movie, he has set up the precious metals job. They're about to do that job like a day or two later. And he has just gotten all the info that he paid for from Tom Noonan to do the bank job. So that's coming up real soon too. He's got these two huge jobs coming up and he wants to go to Tahiti or something, whatever he said he wanted to
New
go
Zealand.
to Fiji. New Zealand? Did he say Fiji? I don't know. Whatever.
He talked about the iridescent algae in Fiji, but the plan
and she says something about have you ever been there? And he's like, someday or something.
Right, but the ultimate plan was for him to escape to New Zealand. But
okay. Well,
anyway,
the point is,
I've seen this movie too many times.
The point is that their take on the scene was this guy is so professional that he's willing to offer this woman to pay for her and her kid and set her up somewhere with a new life if she gives him one more chance, because if she leaves him right now, he's going to be a wreck and he's not going to be valuable to Neil. He's not going to be there. And he and Val Kilmer, unlike the other guys, I mean, Danny Trejo's a reliable wheelman and Tom Sizemore's a reliable extra gun and extra person, but like Val Kilmer is clearly the technical guy on their crew. He handles all the explosives, he handles the heavy machinery, he's the one who goes into the vault. I mean, he is the technical guy. And he's the one who deals with the computers on the bank and everything like that. So it's like they looked at it as like he needs him and he needs his head clear. He needs him straight. He needs him firing at 100%, for this thing. And it's worth the money, even if he screws up again and loses his wife and costs him all this money to follow up on his word and set her up. It's worth it for him to have him functioning on his crew.
I mean, honestly,
that's actually very, very clear, no doubt.
Yeah,
I'm wondering, do you think it's one, the other, a little bit of both?
I think it's both.
What both? No. He needs him to get the job done.
Well, of course
that's all he cares about.
Yeah,
I think he cares somewhat.
He cares at all about him as a friend.
No. He's got some feelings, and he's got some feelings. It is both. Like I do think he's got some feelings for her and for him, and he wants them to get along. But right now, it's an investment. Yeah, like it's worth the money for him to get the job done.
I think I would say that it's like maybe 70-30, 70. This is a pragmatic decision because I need him to get the job done, and 30. I kind of care about the guy too.
Okay, I was just curious what your thoughts were.
But I do wonder too, like if there's a little bit of like, if he's smart enough to know that probably down the road this is not going to work out. Like he's going to fuck up again, and
there, right?
yeah. But right now, what I need is to convince her to like get along with him, just so we can do this job. And who knows, maybe it'll be enough money to for Val Kilmer to get off his gambling addiction, but probably not. But that's not my problem. That
Right,
type
right.
of
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Because
interesting.
I don't think, does he tell him anything? He doesn't really reprimand him or in any way or tell him like, I mean, he tells him to like go home and, but I don't think he tells him, hey, you should like lay off the gambling or something.
Well,
He
well,
well, go
also
ahead,
the
Matt.
first, I mean, the first time that De Niro brought up, that whole, don't get involved with anything unless you're willing to walk out on it in 30 seconds flat was talking to Val Kilmer. So,
Yeah.
and
I
that
think in his
preceded the
own
scene.
way, he kind of talks about it. Like, I mean, he's doesn't reprimand him because that's not the kind of friendship they have. I mean, he just sort of like look at the things he chooses to ask him, right? Like he's almost kind of giving him a hard time in the way that character would talk to Val Kilmer. He's like,
Yeah.
really? Like you're having money problems? How even with all the stuff we're taking down? Seriously? And then he says like, well, there's the bookie, and then there's the Super Bowl, and then there was Vegas, and there's all this stuff. I just don't have any money. And he's like, okay. And then he goes into the whole 30-second flat thing. So it's like in a way he's kind of telling him, you're screwing up, man. Like you should not be living your life the way you are. You should be living it like me.
Actually, I think that we're kind of scratching the surface of something that's really great about this movie, in that again, it is made for adults, and it's made for adults in the way that every character in the movie, except for Natalie Portman's, is an adult, and they treat each other like adults. Like I think a lesser filmmaker and a lesser writer would have had a scene where Neil McCauley is having a scene with Chris Shaherless and berating him. I'm looking at your credit statements, and what the hell are you doing with your life? We just took down this score, and you got $200,000. How are you struggling for money? But no, I mean, Neil understands that Chris is another adult. He might not be adulting as well as Neil, but he's an adult.
Or as well as Tom Sizemore, for that matter.
Right. So he's treating everybody like adults. And Al Pacino is treating most of the people around him like adults. Everybody in the movie, again, except for Natalie Portman, is an adult who's treating everybody else in their lives like a fucking adult. Yeah, I mean, I think that a lesser filmmaker might have come in, and had there be like a berating of this character for just being irresponsible and being childish, but Neil expects everybody to behave like he does, and
To be on his level.
Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, but that's mostly his character. I don't think that it's impossible to have a character that would,
No, there's another
trying
way
to
of
analyze
doing
or at least like help another character like figure things out or something. It's just that, yeah, I think Michael Mann kind of sees that all these characters are in a way stuck in their way or very stubborn, like they are who they are. But it is true that Val Kilmer is the one that ends up doing what the quote says and walks away in 30 seconds from everything that he has. But that's the only way he's gonna have a life.
I don't know if I mean, I feel like walking away in 30 seconds would have been never going to the house in the first place, because they say John Voight and De Niro's scene, he comes in and he's like, where is he? Where's Chris or something like that? And he says like, hey, it's a free country, man. I wasn't going to keep him here against his will. He wanted to go see his wife. So like he took off to go to the house to go see his wife.
Yeah,
and it's like,
but it's not to say that it's true that wasn't a walk away.
Yeah, he does end up walking away.
Signal with his wife, like she signals him, so he knows that she's been caught. But in a way, he's the only one that doesn't gets away with it. Is what I'm saying. Like whereas De Niro doesn't. Yeah.
True.
Yeah, no, I guess that's the conclusion. It's a very adult movie. I mean, if nothing else, even the Natalie Portman character like has a
Oh,
lot
she's
going on.
outstanding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
She's so good in this movie. It's crazy. Such a
yeah.
small
yeah.
part.
It's an adult movie wherein everybody keeps his or her clothes on,
Yeah,
at least for the most part. But
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I
It's
get
not
what
that
you're
kind of an
saying.
adult movie.
Adult movie.
Adult.
yeah,
I wanted to mention real quick a couple of things. Like, I don't remember when this came into my head at some point over the years or something, but with the exception of maybe Lynch, isn't it interesting how like nobody shoots L.A. like Michael Mann does?
yeah,
Like, I mean, the opening 2 or 3 shots of this movie, there's something like people capture LA kind of. And sometimes, especially if you show landmarks and if you've lived there, you kind of go like, "Oh, I know where that is." Haha, and stuff like that. Sometimes it even feels sort of like LA. And some movies do like a fun version or a surreal version or something, but something about Michael Mann's films that take place in LA, they are more LA than like anything else I've ever seen. I know that's not very
yeah.
descriptive, but I don't know how else to
No,
say it.
no, I get, I really get what you're saying. And
Especially, I think
there,
Collateral does a good job of that.
Collateral does it the
Yeah.
best, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the funny thing is, when Collateral was first written, it was set in New York,
Wow.
and when Michael Mann took control of the project as the director, he moved it to L.A.
Hmm.
Actually, the original plan was to have Robert De Niro play the role of Max, and Michael Mann decided against that too. So, uh, but yeah,
Interesting.
Collateral was first supposed to be in New York, and they moved it to L.A. after Michael Mann took over because Michael Mann. I mean, it's just one of those weird things. He just knows LA. Not only does he know LA as well as anybody, he knows LA at night
Yeah.
better better than anybody that I can think of. This was and Heat was a movie that was shot almost entirely. I don't think they used a single soundstage in the entire movie.
Wow.
They Everything was on location. Everything was just places that they found in the Los Angeles area. Having lived in LA for as long as I did, every so often, okay, pick me up off the 101, or pick me up off Venice or something like that. Oh, I know where that is, but they actually filmed that you know, where they were staying. Michael Mann just gets LA at night, and
Yeah.
he gets it in a way that I'm not really sure that I fully get it. I'm not sure that I fully understand it, but I just know that when I watch Michael Mann shooting a movie that's set in LA at night, I'm looking at it and thinking, "Holy shit, that's LA at night."
Yeah.
Well,
So,
one thing
yeah,
in Heat I would say is, you know, De Niro seems to be living like on the beach, probably
Yeah.
Malibu,
Oh,
and
they
yeah,
renting
have
like a
to, right?
small house there. But the love interest, forgot her name,
Edie.
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 Yeah, like she's like living in the Hollywood Hills above Sunset Plaza, renting a
Uh-huh.
house. That shit is really expensive. I
Yeah.
don't think she's like paying for that with a librarian, like or like working at a bookstore or whatever she was
They
doing.
make it
Yeah,
seem a little too glamorous because of its location, but at least in the dialogue, they give it a little bit of lip service because she says, "Oh, it's an old place and
It's
it's
an old
run
place.
down."
It's very tiny, but yeah, but
Yeah.
still, it's one
I
of the
mean, that
best view in
view.
LA.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
and
like that
you're not
rent
even
there has
you're
to
not
be
even in
like
like the
six,
shitty
seven,
part.
$8,000 a month or something.
Yeah.
It's a house, not an apartment.
You're not she's not even in like the like reclusive, difficult to get to canyon areas. She says she's right above Sunset Plaza. That's ideal.
No,
Like, I mean,
it's pretty damn expensive there. I can only
yeah.
imagine. But yeah, and by the way, very far from Malibu. But
Right? Well,
yeah,
I thought about that while I was watching too. I was
it's
like,
like, how are they in the same
uh,
coffee shop? Like,
yeah.
how is that connection made? Like that those same diner wherever they meet. Like those distances are very far. But I guess De Niro gets around.
I think it's supposed to be that she
Mhm.
works near him or something, but not near her.
But
Because
that's a long commute to work at a
it's a
bookstore.
really long
There's a
commute,
lot of
right?
bookstores
I
in
know.
LA.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because
No,
I don't
no,
know
but no.
where.
Actually, she said I think in the scene she says she lives up here or something, right?
Oh,
Like
he
so
says
it's
that. She goes.
he's
He says something, and she says, "No, I got a little place on the hill above the Sunset Plaza." And then she goes, "And you?" And he just goes, "I live here, or I live up here," or something like that. And
yeah, he
I
might
think
be lying.
the line
Lying.
is to like, oh yeah, maybe he never took her to his house. Maybe I don't know.
He never
I
takes
don't.
her to
I
his
thought.
house.
Well,
Yeah.
the look on her face and the reaction she has when he says, "I live up here," is like, oh, like the bookstore is in a really nice part of town, like close to somewhere, not too far from Malibu or something like that. Therefore, it just he's not bragging about it because you can tell his tone, but he is just letting her know, I got a place in this area, and she's like, oh shit, kind of thing. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. That's what I got from it.
Yeah, but mostly I agree about Michael Mann. I think he does, but he overly romanticizes it a bit, which is his thing. We discussed in Manhunter too. Like he picks the Sunset Plaza location, and then De Niro's like on the beach in Malibu or Santa Monica or something, and then the heist happens like right off the. I think one of the things. I think maybe the early heist happens like right off the 110 there, like near like downtown.
Yeah.
And then another thing happens like and it definitely like at times you're like, oh wow, LA doesn't have that many tall buildings, but if you want to find them, if you want to set a scene there, you can set it
Yeah.
that they exist. It's
Yeah.
just that it's not very common. but um
It's more
but
flat
yeah,
and spread out.
I think the best as far as like fiction that showcases LA is Entourage. I feel like in many ways, um, Entourage kind of takes you like through the entire gamut. Like you have PTA does like the whole Valley movies,
Yeah, he does the
and
Valley. Yeah.
David Lynch does a lot of Hollywood, but dirty, disgusting Hollywood, like
Yeah.
La Brea and Hollywood Boulevard and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you have other ones, but yeah, Michael Mann definitely is on the glamorous side of that. The Collateral, he gets a bit more down and dirty, but he does a bit glamour, more glamour than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't like a big deal or anything, but I just thought it's worth mentioning, like, because we already talked about the, various aspects of this movie that we thought were great and whatever. But one of the things that I think really informs the characters and is just really great about this movie is like some of the little details of the like production design and everything. I mean, like the all of these characters, they've got all these little things, like from costumes to props and things like that, that really inform the characters in interesting ways. Or even if they don't inform them, they at least kind of say subtle things to the audience and lets you kind of be distinctive and stuff. Like in the opening uh, armored car heist, all the characters who we were just meeting for the first time. So if you're not rewatching the movie, you don't know who anyone is just yet, you know. But we see from the opening dialogue between Tom Sizemore and Waingro that he's new and this is the first time he's ever been with them, you know. And all of them are wearing different hockey masks, like, goalie hockey masks, to protect their identities and be scary and such. They give Waingro this one that's distinctively different. It still looks scary and it still looks interesting, but it's not like all the rest of theirs, and it just makes him stand out in an interesting way. And it's like little touches like that. Like I think that somebody, the armorer probably, and the production designer and the director, I'm assuming, all got together because like they the characters all use very distinctive guns. The guns play a really big part in their characters, I think. Like you've got like both um the two main characters, Neil and Hannah, they're supposed to be so similar to each other, and their handguns that they're using and the way that they hold them, the way that they intentionally show these scenes where they're like preparing for something that's about to happen, and they're checking their chambers on their guns to make sure that they're like ready to shoot, and everything, that they've got a round chambered and everything, and the way they're handling their guns is the same and stuff like that. You've got, like, in the big shootout, once again we're showing that, like, that De Niro and Val Kilmer are closer to each other than everybody else, and they're running around with these they're kind of like M4s. They're like early versions of M4s, I guess. There's like awesome little assault rifles, and you've got Tom Sizemore is running around with like a Galil, and it's just like very different than the cops, who are all running around with like these like Mossberg shotguns, and Al Pacino's characters has this like awesome thing. I don't remember what it's called. It's like a FNC 80 or something like that. It's just awesome rifle, but he's running around only firing like one shot, semi-auto, because like Matt mentioned earlier, there's this whole like watch your backgrounds. They're trying to show that he's under control. He is careful, and he's worried about collateral damage, whereas the other guys are just out there spraying bullets. Val Kilmer's running around with that machine gun, just like gunning people down, and
Oh, because you brought that up, that's good, because I really wanted to remember this. And the guns. It's funny that you went into that, because here's me like trying to wrap the episode like 30 minutes ago, but
sorry,
we get into this. No, but it's just I'm failing miserably. It's trying to keep this short, but it's okay. We'll try to finish it up. But I'm glad that you brought this up, because in LA Takedown there's a scene that really bothers me about guns, and usually Matt and you are the ones that are bothered by gun stuff, but that really bothered me. In Heat, when he saves the girl that Tom Sizemore takes hostage, right? He gets him in the line of sight when he turns around, and he uses the the assault rifle, right? The one that's like the longer rifle, not a handgun, because it's got the sights on it and everything, and he takes him
really
down.
good assault rifle, yeah.
Perfect, great. That's what you would do. That's the gun you want to use. An LA Takedown, he's got both the assault rifle and a pistol. And what does he do? He's got the assault rifle,
He uses
and
the
guy
pistol.
turns around, he drops it, takes out the pistol, and squints and shoots.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, no, that looks cool, but that's the wrong gun if you want to be accurate. Pistols are not as accurate as an assault rifle.
You're gonna kill
I
that
was
little
in the
kid.
army for 3 years, so I know this stuff.
Yeah, that bothered the shit out of me too.
And he already had the rifle in his hands, so to also do the exchange, I was like, probably Michael Mann saying like, "Oh, it's gonna look cool," but it makes no sense, like tactic wise.
No.
Anyways,
my God.
And then one last thing I'll say is one joke that I've already mentioned, that Xander Berkeley, right? Because he played Raingrow.
Yeah.
He has the line in LA Takedown too that says like, if this works out, I'll be happy to work with you guys again. And he's the only one that ends up working with those guys again on Heat. Like he makes the transition to the other movies. So it's I think that's why Michael Mann brought him back, just for that joke, maybe.
That's funny. Well, he's a good actor.
And he's
got a good face.
He's just not a good Waingro.
No. He's not. He would not have been as good as Waingro.
He was not nearly as sleazy as Waingro. Yeah, no, the casting in Heat is next level. There's no doubt.
You even just like all the side characters. You got Magua in there, and Buffalo Bill, and President Palmer.
Yeah.
There is in LA Takedown. There is one guy that's familiar. I think the guy from Mortal Kombat. I think, right?
Which one?
Shang Tsung. I think.
Oh, is he in it? That's interesting.
I think he's in it. Yeah. Because I was like, that guy's familiar. It's like Michael Rooker and that guy. I was like, I was trying to spot people that I know, but let me just double check this. Yeah.
Did you guys? Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, Kerry Hiroki Tagawa. The Mortal Kombat. Yeah, Shang Tsung.
He's a
I
good
got it
actor.
right.
Did you guys happen to see? This is a really recent thing I just happened to watch not too long ago, like maybe 3 or 4 months ago or something. But this is terrible. Now I'm like mentioning it. I can't remember which company did it. But Wes Studi actually had an interview recently where he was just talking about all of the movies in his career and stuff. And he had this awesome anecdote. It was just, I thought it was hilarious. But he was saying that he had made Last of the Mohicans, and time had passed. I don't know how much time, but months for sure. He was definitely on a friendly basis with Michael Mann and stuff like that, but not like they would like talk or see each other, or anything like that. But he had his phone number and everything for his office, and so he had heard a little something about Heat being made, and he was just like, "Oh my gosh, this movie's gonna be huge." So he gets his phone out and he calls Michael Mann's office. And of course, at this point in time, like Michael Mann's like probably really well into pre-production and stuff like that or something. And so his secretary answers, and he's kind of like thinking like, I might not even get him. Let's just see if this works. And so his secretary answers the phone and she's like, yeah, I'll see if I can get him real quick. Hold on. And he said, as like he was waiting for like almost like 5 minutes or something like that. And finally, Michael Mann gets on the phone and he's just like, hey, what's going on? And he's just like, oh, Michael. He's like, hey, I heard this rumor that you are making a movie with Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and me. And he's like, oh, is that true? And he says like that Michael Mann is not somebody who laughs that often. And he says he just started laughing so hard. And he was just like, all right, give me a few minutes. And he like hangs up or something and called him back later. And he was like, all right, you could be in it.
Who was this? I don't know why I missed the beginning.
Wes Studi.
Oh, Wes Studi. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the detectives. Yeah.
Yeah, he's his second in command.
That's
Al Pacino.
That's a nice pickup line almost. Yeah, like
yeah, right.
And so was he because he knew him from other stuff? Is that why?
Well, he was Magua, the bad guy in Last of the Mohicans.
Oh. So, and it was the following movie, like the follow-up. Yeah. No, it's a good trick. It's you gotta like you were there for him on the very ethnic specific thing. You're like, hey, come on, you gotta get some diversity in this puppy.
He damn near made the Last Mohicans movie too. He's so great in that movie. But yeah.